love bugs! So we're back here for reading for today. So as we're reading our historical fiction book, we're keeping in mind what's happening to our characters and how they're changing, which you all did a fabulous job of yesterday. So I'm very impressed with how hard you're working and how much you're learning about your characters and who they are as people and how they're growing as your book goes on. So what we're going to do today in reading is we're going to take a look at some smaller parts of your story, of your book, that play a big role. They're super significant and super important in the story, even though they're tiny things that are happening. So we're going to watch this video. We're going to go onto Epic and read some of your book. And then there's an independent practice page at the end of this that I'll show you at the end of the slide. So as a reader, you should be reading alertly, so reading with your eyes open, so not just kind of like flipping through the pages, but paying attention to what's happening, pausing to think about what just happened, why is that important, does that mean anything for the story, does that mean anything for my character? So some guiding questions that help you when you pause and stop your reading is to ask, what is this part really about? What is this section about? What is this chapter about? And how does this part, this section, this chapter connect to the rest of my story, connect to the rest of the book? Why is it important? Authors obviously write things for a reason. They put things into a book for a reason. They don't just go like willy-nilly adding like dragons and unicorns. They specifically write characters or moments or symbols or people for a reason. So stopping to think about what that part was about and why that part was put into the book is super important for you to kind of deepen your understanding and get to really know. I'm trying to like put my face in like the one side of the screen. So you should be stopping in your book and thinking about some of those things, about different parts and how they connect to the larger picture. So some things that are super important for examples of what you can stop and look at, some clues that a part of the story is really important, are repeated symbols, something that catches you by surprise or stands out, or new insights and new ideas. So repeated symbols, all that means is that if you're seeing an image or a word that's bringing up often, that comes up often in your story, it probably means something. So if you're hearing about a certain animal all the time, so like in Tiger Rising, we keep coming back to the tiger, and the tiger definitely plays a huge role in that story. So in The Babe and I, the read aloud that we're doing right now, apples come up a lot, newspapers come up a lot, and those are definitely there for a reason. Our second idea is that something that catches you surprise or stands out. So as a reader, when you're reading, there may be a moment where you're like, what? I so wasn't expecting that. That's crazy. So when you stop as you're reading and you're like, what? Why would the author do that? Why would my character do that? Why is it in the book? So some examples in The Babe and I are when our narrator finds out that his dad is selling apples on Webster Ave and lost his job. Another moment in our story that is surprising is at the end when we realize that Babe Ruth, who has been selling these newspapers, his name has been selling these newspapers, shows up and buys a newspaper. That was a pretty significant moment. I even was like, what? So why would the author, David Adler, put that in there? Babe Ruth was obviously important to the story and to the larger historical context of what was happening. So we can stop and think about why the author would put him in there, even to buy a newspaper. And new insight and ideas is just if you have like a new thought when something exciting happens or something crazy happens, when you have a new thought. So when the narrator and his friend Jacob just figure out that to sell newspapers, the best way to sell newspapers is to talk about Babe Ruth in front of the baseball stadium so that all of the audience who is going into the baseball stadium is interested and wants to buy it. Another part is when our narrator offers to help his neighbor so that he can use the carriage to sell more newspapers and to keep more, bringing more back and forth to the stadium from home. And when our narrator keeps the secret about having a job and the fact that he finds out that his dad doesn't have a job. So why would the character have to hide that? Why is that important to the story? It's important to the story because at the time, a lot of people were embarrassed to not have a job and to be selling apples, and the narrator didn't want to embarrass his dad. So the author adds all of these things in, the repeated symbols, scenes that catch you by surprise, and new ideas into their story for a reason. So those are some examples from our read aloud and this super handy dandy helpful chart to help you to go back to. Because on the last slide, where your independent practice is, after you read your independent book for 15 to 20 minutes, you're going to come back to this slide. So you can either reread a part or you can read some more of your book. And you're going to take some thoughts and some jots down about your own independent book. So you're going to think about some repeated symbols, so some objects, some people, some things that you see come up often so far, something that stands out, at least one scene that stands out to you that you think was important, and a new insight, a new idea you have about your story. So after reading a little bit, what new idea do you have? So you're going to write these down in the chart right here, here, and here. And let us know if you have any questions. Happy reading.